Share my screen. There we go. And oh, where'd it go? Play. There's her picture. There we go. All right. Oh, hold on. I gotta move. It always seems to be our pictures like right where I can't see everything on the screen. Okay, I'll move it down this way. Now I'm good. All right. There we go. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So today's topic is closing techniques, how to confidently turn conversations and consultations into signed buyer agreements and listing agreements. Again, our whole goal as realtors and loan officers is to get people to sign on the dotted line when they're a buyer, sign buyers agreements so that you could start looking at homes. And when someone wants to sell your house, you want to get them to that point and give you some tips on how to get them to sign on that dotted line, because until they do, you just have, you don't really you have a prospect. It's not a client until you got them to sign and agree to you. So closing techniques, how to confidently turn conversations and consultations into signed buyer agreements and listing agreements, build trust before asking for commitments, establish your value early in the conversation, set expectations for working together, recognize when the client is ready to move forward, and confidently ask for a signature. Closing should feel like the natural next step, not a high pressure tactic. So before I start on this, I just want to jump to the next one because I know I always jump ahead. So, so we'll just jump in one at a time here. So the one thing when I train brand new agents is to keep the make sure you ask a lot of questions before you get to that point of asking for a signature and asking for the business, because you want to know all the questions of why they want to buy, where do they want to buy, everything that you should ask a seller. And to all of our agents or any agents out there, I have those lists of things to ask. We have them in our scripts library. We have them in our training and our coaching. So things to ask. So with this is setting the expectation early, making signing the agreement the expected next step. So explain your process at the beginning of the consultation, like example saying, hey, I'm going to like if you've had this kind of sales tactic before, is when you're going to talk to or meet with a buyer or a seller, are all people that are going to be making decisions there? Is it a husband and wife, siblings, partners, if they're investors? Is everybody making the decision? And when you may have set that appointment to have that listing presentation or buyer presentation, is making sure, will you be ready to make a decision at that time? So again, expectation, will you be able to make that decision? Because you could be prepared. Like if it's a listing, sorry to get off tangent, you have the sign, you have the paperwork, or is this just a pre-meeting? So setting the expectation, do they want to, are they going to be ready to list? Are they going to be ready to sign a buyer agreement when you're ready? So you could prepare for that. Tell clients how you work and they can expect from you. Introduce the agreement before you're ready to ask for the signature. Position representation as part of your professional services. Avoid surprising clients with paperwork at the end. Pro tip, say early at the end, if we both feel we're a good fit, we'll review the agreement and decide if it makes the sense. So before I get your take on this, Tone, is I always suggest, well, just stick with the listing or buyer appointment. When you're going to meet with somebody, without the amounts in there, you don't put any like what you think the house is worth when it's listing, or what your percentage of commission is, or your buyer agreement, same thing, percent of commission or time, how long you're going to have the buyer agreement. I would suggest you get them the document in your presentation by PDF or PowerPoint or video, if you could set it up in a video. So they get all the information. So I say, I want to send you my video on my listing presentation or my PowerPoint or this or that. So they can read through it, and the listing agreement and the buyer agreement. So you have time to review it and get all your questions in order so you're not seeing it for the first time. I'm big on that. I've talked to a lot of agents over the years that like I like to bring everything then. I said then they don't feel comfortable reading it all in front of you and want to have you come back a second time. Skip that step. So, what are your thoughts on this, Tone?
Well, it's all the same framework for us when we're selling on our side, just with one less extra step, which is actually signing an agreement. You know, my take on it is it's a luxury. We can have people that drop out and decide to go with a different lender days before closing.
Right.
As an agent, that's nowadays that's not possible. But again, the next step framework is all the same. Setting
Right.
expectations early on,
Yep. Yep.
to make sure that they know that it's coming. We can pretty much all we can get is a verbal agreement or an intent to proceed, not an actual contractual agreement to proceed forward with
Exactly.
us.
Right.
But still, the
So yeah, just a
selling part
little
of it is the same.
exactly. So to all the realtors out there, so to make you feel better about what we do compared to loan officers, I mean, is we get an agreement and we can hold them to it. Unfortunately, loan officers don't have agreements with people. They don't allow it. Hopefully, someday they will have that. So when they do all of that work at the end. So this is my public service announcement to all realtors is because I've had this happen to some of our realtors is that all of a sudden they get the buyer gets pre-approved and thank you for listening to me going off on a tangent. They get all the way to the end. The loan officer does the work. They get the pre-approval. They get accepted with the pre-approval. And then the agent I say this, lets them start shopping around again when you as an agent should not. And every time I talk to an agent, I go, why are you doing that? And they go, well, it's my job to, if they want to go somewhere else to get a better rate. I go, no, that's not your job. Your job is to make sure they have a fair rate, not the lowest in the world. And you obviously trusted that loan officer that they started with, or they did. They should stick with that loan officer on that. It's just professional courtesy. Also, I tell agents is this. What happens if buyers and sellers thought that they can do that to realtors? Like, oh, I got an offer on my house. Let me shop my realtor, see if this one's doing it for 4%. I could do it for 2%. I promise you, I have agents, love all my agents. Some charge more than others. So what happens if a buyer called my office and said, hey, I love my agent, but do you have one that'll do it cheaper? We don't do that as realtors, so don't do that to your loan officers. You
All
explain,
right.
you please don't. That's not fair. And also, I've had a couple of our listing agents deny, make it part of their purchase agreement. You must use the purchase agreement that the pre-approval that's on that you gave me as part of the offer. I wish more agents would do that when there's your listing because then it stops the buyer on your listing shopping around and they'll stick with who they're with because so many times they get delayed closing. They don't get approved with a new person, and they're running around thinking it's going to take them 2 days to get approval, and it doesn't matter. So, listing agents, your job is not to get that buyer the best rate. You say stick with your lender, put it in the contract. So sell your value before you ask. Give them a reason to choose you. Ask questions before presenting your services. Identify the client's biggest concern and priorities. Explain specifically how you will help solve those problems. Demonstrate your market knowledge, resources, and strategy. Connect your value directly to their desired outcome. Pro tip. Clients rarely object to signing because of the document itself. They hesitate when they haven't yet seen enough value in the relationship. So, example, with us as realtors, when we are out there with, let's say, listings, you should have a strong enough listing presentation and that by the end of the presentation, they should have had it before to review and then answer all their questions and go through it again in front of them or Zoom with them, that they're so confident that they're going to use you by the end. Also, if they're interviewing other agents, say, go ahead. Ask them, hey, this is a controversial question. Do you want to be first or do you want to be last? I say you want to be first. You want to be first. Don't be last because those first, say you're three, those first two people might have given them such a good presentation, then they cancel you. So some people are like, I like to go last. No, you want to go first. That's my opinion. Another thing, some enlisting presentations, some very professional agents never, they ask for the signature on the listing agreement. They go, do you want to do business? Great. Let's get this signed. And then usually the seller will go, oh my gosh, but what do you think my house is worth? I go, oh, that's not for me to decide. That's the market decide. We'll go over the comparable. So some agents go into a listing presentation and don't even discuss the value of their house, or go into great detail. They, say they think it's, your house is worth somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000, but we'll go through all the comparables and see what the market shows. I don't pick the price that you and the market decide where to list your house. And I give you the suggestion. So some agents don't even have that conversation with people until they sign the listing agreement. Some even are direct enough. It goes, I'm not going to tell you that number of what I think you should be because you get to approve it, and we're going to go through the numbers because you have to. I don't want to help you do that unless you want to use me, and that's fair, right? I don't know. What do you think about that? I mean, I know loan officers are totally different. You got to tell, what the current rate is right this second, and what your costs are, and go through over that, and you kind of got to go through everything. But what
Well,
else?
I never go over numbers on the first call. And I think the easiest way to sell your value before asking is just by assuming the sale that, you are going to be doing business together, like we said on the first slide, just establishing that going forward and using language, future language, just assuming that you are going to be working together. I started listening to agent podcasts as opposed to loan officer ones because I want to see what the
Right.
advice was out there, with listing appointments or buyer consultations, um, getting the buyer broker, the comp agreement out of the way, first,
Mhm.
just establishing we're going to go through it and sign it at, the end, not actually walking through it. You can mix in, send them the PDF or whatever, but that's just you assuming the sale. For me, that just builds confidence going forward through it. For me, I feel like it builds confidence in the client as well. Again, we're going over next steps, not a sales pitch. We're walking you through a
Exactly.
service, not a product.
Right. And the other reason I think a lot of agents lose some business is because they don't put enough effort into their presentation. Um, the good and bad news about our industry is that the consumers and even agents, like when it's loan officers, there's agents that trust loan officers. They don't call up Tony. Hey Tony, what's the current rate? They go, I'm sending you a client. They don't. They just know they love your work and your business. And they know you're fair. Same with realtors. Some people don't even give a presentation. It's a friend or a family. They know you, they trust you, and then they just go into it without telling them everything they're going to do. They're not selling themselves enough, and they don't realize they're about to interview somebody else. So many times, almost weekly, I hear from one of my agents. They go, I lost a listing or lost a buyer. It was a friend, it was a family or whatever, and they went with somebody else. And I probably, in almost all of the time, I go, well, did you give them a listing presentation? Well, no, I was discussing it over the phone, or I just brought over their listing presentation, was just bringing over the listing agreement or sending them the seller documents and not even sending them a listing a listing presentation, and you didn't realize that they wanted it. So the good news again, our business, a lot of agents do some pretty good business without even having to have a listing presentation or a buyer presentation or really sell themselves because people love them and trust them and just go with it. But they lose business sometimes because they think it's a slam dunk. Um, Let's see here. Go one more. Listing close. Turn your seller consultations into listings. Confirm the seller's goals, timing, and motivation. Present a clear pricing and marketing strategy. Explain how you will prepare, promote, and negotiate the property. Summarize why your plan fits their specific situations. Transition confidently if you're comfortable with the plan. Let's get the paperwork complete and get started. Don't end a strong presentation with think about it and call me. Ask for the business. So back to a little bit what I was saying. Sometimes some agents keep some of that secret sauce until they show them business, especially if they're interviewing other agents. So, I've role played with agents, not lately in the last few weeks, but on how to keep some of the secret sauce and say things like, hey, and then I got this whole other marketing presentation of exactly where I go, Facebook, Instagram, social media things. I pay for advertisements. I do certain things at open houses and all of that, but I don't have that on a piece of paper or in a presentation, but I'm happy to explain that. And some people are like, oh, why? Why don't you just explain it? Well, when you want to do business with me, I'll go through all of that verbally, but I don't want my competition to know everything I do because you could, depending upon the personality of the people, say it's a listing, go, hey, but, I've had people that their brother-in-law is a brand new agent. And then I just showed you my presentation of exactly all the secret things I do to help go above and beyond. Then you just give that recipe to your brother-in-law. That's not fair to me to do that. And also same the price of the house, going through all the prices. Some people are just shopping agent by who says their house is worth the most. So this is a little controversial for me to say as a broker. I say always give them a range until they sign the dotted line with you. Say your house is worth somewhere. The highest sale in your area was 300,000 and the lowest is 200,000. You're in that range, and when we're going to nail it down after when we start working with each other. So and then because I know I've had agents lose business because they said, "Oh, your house will specifically sell like the quickest at 250,000," and they wanted 275, and someone said, "Hey, we'll try it at 275." So I know you don't want to overprice a listing, but you don't want to oversell yourself and try to get a pinpoint of who's going to offer buy the house at that exact price tomorrow. Agents try to do that way too much on that. Uh, Trial closes and buying signals. Know when they're ready to say yes. Ask small commitment questions throughout the conversation. Listen for questions about timing and next steps. Watch for agreement with your recommendations. Use questions such as, does this strategy make sense to you? When you receive several positive responses, move to the close. A series of small yeses makes the final commitment feel like a logical continuation of the conversation. So yes, when you're having conversations with them, trying to, that's just normal negotiation skills of saying, so do you agree with this? Does this make sense? Get everything that says yes. You try to have all of your questions in order of what you ask your listings and your buyers. Does this make sense? What's your timing? Is this important to you? Yes. Is this important to you? Yes. The more yeses they say, the more easy it's to get the yes at the end. So what do you think about that?
I think, yeah, getting small commitments throughout it, in my experience, there are some people that are following you, and there are some people that are just saying yes because it's a lot, and they don't really, have a good idea of what's going on. But as long as they, you know, as long as you can be on the phone with them, Zoom or in person, and they don't look or sound, visibly uncomfortable, then they're receiving it. If it's not making the most sense to them in the world, and they're still saying yes, at the very least, I feel like that means that they trust you. They're coming to you for a reason. As long as what you're doing is making them comfortable and they're saying yes, then they're trusting you to guide them through the process.
Right.
You know, if you just ask one question, so does this all sound good to you? Right at the end,
Exactly.
say yes, and then try to, throw some paperwork at them or numbers at them. that's when they're going to get, stressed out. You want to do pulse checks every so often.
Yeah, you don't want to lose their attention. Handle objections without losing the close. Questions and concerns are opportunities. Listen completely before responding. Clarify the real concern itself instead of assuming. Acknowledge the client's perspective. Answer the objection clearly and concisely. Ask for the commitment again after answering. So, pro tip, use other than that concern. Is there anything else preventing you from moving forward with me today? That this helps uncover the real objections. Clarifying. So a lot of coaches and trainers is when someone asks you a question, sometimes we're repeating that question. So you're asking me, what is this? Sometimes, I don't like to do that all of the time, like every single question. It just seems weird, like I'm not paying attention. But some people say because it's when someone's asking you a question and you repeat it to them and clarifying, is this your question? Is this your real concern? Sometimes when they hear it, not say it, it's like, oh, well, no. So you could give things like, example, like if someone said, well, what school system or what city do you want to be in? And they go, well, I want to be in the Mayfield schools. I want to live in Mayfield, for the Mayfield school system. So you're saying they just said they want to live in the Mayfield for Mayfield school system, but you could, do you want to live in Mayfield or in a city in the Mayfield schools district? Oh, yeah, no, I just want to make sure we're in the school district. Oh, great, because there's other cities. There's Highland Heights, there's Gates Mills, there's Mayfield Village. They're in the same school district. Someone says, I want to be, live in Lyndhurst because I want to be in the South Utica Lyndhurst school system. So, yeah, so I'm using a school system as an example. When someone says, I want to live, or say, well, what type of home do you want to have? I want a colonial that's at least 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. So do you specifically like a colonial, like you like everything being upstairs, or is a 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath bungalow with bedrooms on the first floor? Is that more of your concern? Like, oh yeah, no, I didn't think of that. Yeah, no, I always thought in this, 3 bedrooms, because they might be moving in from another area where they don't even know what a bungalow is, where there's the different styles or a split level. You never know, where people are. Some people are just a ranch. So yeah, so sometimes when people say I want a style of home, usually they're not 100% stuck with that style, that they would prefer it, but the bedrooms, bathrooms, and everything else. Or someone's like, I'd like to be in a neighborhood that's, quiet or whatever, and asking questions like, well, how about being near a park, or is being on a main street totally off, because I know in my day I'd had people like, I don't want to be on a main street ever. And I know I've sold houses to those people on a main street because the backyard was 200 feet back and it was like a park in the backyard. Like, oh, that's fine. I just didn't want to be on a main street because I just assumed the house might not have a big yard, and my kids will always be playing up front but this one has a huge backyard. So those types of clarifying the question that you ask helps you get to the point and shows that you care. You're clarifying exactly what they want. As for the business, confidence creates commitment. Don't wait for the clients to volunteer to sign, summarize their goals, and you agree upon strategy. Recommend the next steps instead of vaguely suggesting it. Ask a clear closing question and then stop talking. So many times I know agents talk themselves out of listings. They got the sale. Once you get the sale, and they say, yes, let's go with stop talking. Because if you keep talking, you go, okay, then concentrate on the paperwork and the procedure. Okay, great, let's get this going. Okay, here's the paperwork. Don't talk about, I have had agents talk about stuff, and I know they personally or professionally or said something that made people, well, maybe not tonight or maybe tomorrow. Once they agree, immediately move into completing the agreement. Pro tip, ask and be quiet. Many agents lose closings because they are talking after asking for the business. And key takeaway, build trust, demonstrate value, set expectation, ask confidently, get the commitment. So I'm going to jump into here about your clients. So, and then I'll get your final take on this, Tony. So, not closing, not talking about listings or buyers. I'm talking about your buyers that might want to buy a listing. And I've had buyers ruin their chances of buying a listing because they didn't know they were being recorded or watched. They talk themselves out of houses because they didn't realize that they're being watched. Example. So it's kind of along the lines of this, but I have to keep reminding of agents this. People have Ring doorbell cameras. I've had sellers call the listing agents on our buyers, and I've had our sellers too yell at our listing agent and our, and the other side because they heard conversation that the buyer saying when they walked in the door, like making fun of the house or, oh my God, this is terrible. Whatever. So people have, Ring doorbell cams. They have cameras in their house. They see if they touch things. I've had sellers refuse to sell their houses to certain buyers because they saw, what they were doing in their house or said what they were doing in their house. And once we had one buyer, and this was almost a $2 million house. The buyers went into the house after it was a signed contract. They were running, were going for like an inspection, and the seller happened to be home. And in the listing agreement, they had in there that the very expensive chandelier goes and with the seller. The seller was adamant about it. This is a special chandelier to them. The buyers made a comment to each other in front of the seller, or seller was in that room, heard them, that they did not like. Thank God they're taking that god awful chandelier, and the seller refused to continue on with the sale because they didn't want to sell their house. They insulted them, and insult to injury. The sellers decided as soon as they got out of the contract and the buyer got out, they lowered the price by 200,000 and sold it to someone else for 200,000 less, just to spite the first buyers. So I think that's something to say, is that the sale, your buyers, your sellers are selling their house to the buyers, and the buyers are selling themselves to the seller. So sometimes these sales skills, these closing skills, your clients have to have them. But we as agents try to keep everybody separated so these things never happen. But you got to remind yourself to remind your buyers, okay, we're about to walk towards this house. They have Ring cameras. Watch your comments. You might say something that upsets the seller. You might say something that, like, oh my God, I would pay 200,000 more for this house. And then they hear you say that, and you just hurt yourself in negotiation. So watch what you say. When we're out of the house, we'll discussion. So I just thought this was a kind of a class to bring that kind of topic up. So you have any final closing question or
I
ideas?
did not know stuff like that was happening, so I will, keep
Yes.
that in, in recommendations for, when I'm talking to agents. But my final thoughts are, I think getting the commitment, especially when you have to sign something nowadays, is something that I talk to agents and especially newer agents quite frequently, and they're very, very afraid of it. And I like to, think of it as like a, person or, coyote type situation.
Right, right,
They're more afraid of you than you are of them.
right.
They can sniff out fear. If you are not confident in having them sign it and you're beating around the bush with it, they're gonna feel that as well. So
Yeah.
sometimes I guess you gotta have some, blind confidence. I don't know if that's the right term, but just by assuming the sale, that's a very easy mind trick to kind of, a
And
get that across the finish line. And thank God you guys are able to do that. We're
and
not able to do it on our
and
side. I wish we were, you know, but at the end of the day, I really don't think it's all that, scary of a thing. With your presentations, keep them short. I've said before, as you get farther and farther along, do more and more of them, you'll realize that it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter to the
Right.
point where you're at that, you see that other listing agent, you're like, how did they nail that? They talked to him for like 5 minutes. Well, they've been doing it for, X amount of years. So it gets shorter and shorter. They get to the point, they make the sale. They don't add everything extra to it.
Right.
So,
And yeah, the last tip I will say is that no matter where the business is coming from, friend, family, relative, and you think it's a slam dunk and you slack off like you don't are not being interviewed, please don't. Get that listing presentation, get that buyer presentation, send it to it is your best cousin friend, but your best cousin, your favorite cousin that you've known your whole life has a husband or wife on the other side that has a friend that's a realtor too, but he or she didn't tell you that you're being interviewed. Like, oh, come in, talk to us, and they didn't tell you. You just assumed, hey, this is my favorite cousin. There's no way they're not going to give me the business, and then all of a sudden they do. So I think that's one of the main things that some agents lose business because they think it's a slam dunk and they hold themselves back from giving a full presentation. So at least have a presentation for them to review if you don't want to, do the whole thing. So they can at least see everything that you do because no one really knows until they see it in a presentation. So that's it for today. Thank you for joining us, everyone. And remember, reach out to Tony if you need any loan advice or pre-approvals. And I'm here. Schedule a coaching call or on this topic or anything else. I'm happy to help and help you gain more business. So that's it. So have a good day and hope to talk to many of you very soon. Bye-bye.